Book 1, Chapter 12 of Michael Strogoff, Courier of the Tsar. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Michael Strogoff, by Jules Verne. Book 1, Chapter 12. Provocation. Ekaterinburg, geographically, is an Asiatic city, for it is situated beyond the Ural Mountains, on the farthest eastern slopes of the chain. Nevertheless, it belongs to the government of Perm, and consequently is included in one of the great divisions of European Russia. It is as though a morsel of Siberia lay in Russian jaws. Neither Michael nor his companions were likely to experience the slightest difficulty in obtaining means of continuing their journey in so large a town as Ekaterinburg. It was founded in 1723, and has since become a place of considerable size, for in it is the chief mint of the empire. There also are the headquarters of the officials employed in the management of the mines. Thus the town is the center of an important district, abounding in manufactories principally for the working and refining of gold and platina. Just now the population of Ekaterinburg had greatly increased, many Russians and Siberians, menaced by the Tartar invasion, having collected there. Thus, though it had been so troublesome a matter to find horses and vehicles when going to Ekaterinburg, there was no difficulty in leaving it, for under present circumstances few travelers cared to venture on the Siberian roads. So it happened that Blount and Alcide had not the slightest trouble in replacing, by a sound telga, the famous demi carriage which had managed to take them to Ekaterinburg. As to Michael, he retained his tarantass, which was not much the worse for its journey across the Urals, and he had only to harness 3 good horses to it to take him swiftly over the road to Irkutsk. As far as Tiumen, and even up to Novozemsko, this road has slight inclines, which gentle undulations are the first signs of the slopes of the Ural Mountains. But after Novozemsko begins the immense steppe. At Ichim, as we have said, the reporters intended to stop, that is about 420 miles from Ekaterinburg. There they intended to be guided by circumstances as to their route across the invaded country, either together or separately, according as their news-hunting instinct set them on one track or another. This road from Ekaterinburg to Ichim, which passes through Irkutsk, was the only one which Michael could take. But as he did not run after news, and wished, on the contrary, to avoid the country devastated by the invaders, he determined to stop nowhere. "I am very happy to make part of my journey in your company," said he to his new companions, "but I must tell you that I am most anxious to reach Omsk, for my sister and I are going to rejoin our mother. Who can say whether we shall arrive before the Tartars reach the town? I must therefore stop at the post houses only long enough to change horses, and must travel day and night." "That is exactly what we intend doing," replied Blount. "Good," replied Michael; "but do not lose an instant. Buy or hire a carriage whose hind wheels," added Alcide, "are warranted to arrive at the same time as its front wheels." Half an hour afterwards the energetic Frenchman had found a tarantass in which he and his companion at once seated themselves. Michael and Nadia once more entered their own carriage, and at 12 o'clock the 2 vehicles left the town of Ekaterinburg together. Nadia was at last in Siberia, on that long road which led to Irkutsk. What must then have been the thoughts of the young girl? 3 strong swift horses were taking her across that land of exile where her parent was condemned to live, for how long she knew not, and so far from his native land. But she scarcely noticed those long steppes over which the tarantass was rolling, and which at one time she had despaired of ever seeing, for her eyes were gazing at the horizon, beyond which she knew her banished father was. She saw nothing of the country across which she was traveling at the rate of 15 versts an hour, nothing of these regions of western Siberia, so different from those of the east. Here, indeed, were few cultivated fields. The soil was poor, at least at the surface. But in its bowels lay hid quantities of iron, copper, platina, and gold. How can hands be found to cultivate the land, when it pays better to burrow beneath the earth? The pickaxe is everywhere at work, the spade nowhere. However, Nadia's thoughts sometimes left the provinces of Lake Baikal and returned to her present situation. Her father's image faded away, and was replaced by that of her generous companion, as he first appeared on the Vladimir Railroad. She recalled his attentions during that journey, his arrival at the police station, the hearty simplicity with which he had called her sister, his kindness to her in the descent of the Volga, and then all that he did for her on that terrible night of the storm in the Urals, when he saved her life at the peril of his own. Thus Nadia thought of Michael. She thanked God for having given her such a gallant protector, a friend so generous and wise. She knew that she was safe with him, under his protection. No brother could have done more than he. All obstacles seemed cleared away, the performance of her journey was but a matter of time. Michael remained buried in thought. He also thanked God for having brought about this meeting with Nadia, which at the same time enabled him to do a good action and afforded him additional means for concealing his true character. He delighted in the young girl's calm intrepidity. Was she not indeed his sister? His feeling towards his beautiful and brave companion was rather respect than affection. He felt that hers was one of those pure and rare hearts which are held by all in high esteem. However, Michael's dangers were now beginning, since he had reached Siberian ground. If the reporters were not mistaken, if Ivan Ogareff had really passed the frontier, all his actions must be made with extreme caution. Things were now altered. Tartar spies swarmed in the Siberian provinces. His incognito once discovered, his character as courier of the Czar known, there was an end of his journey, and probably of his life. Michael felt now more than ever the weight of his responsibility. While such were the thoughts of those occupying the first carriage, what was happening in the second? Nothing out of the way. Alcide spoke in sentences, Blount replied by monosyllables. Each looked at everything in his own light, and made notes of such incidents as occurred on the journey, few and but slightly varied, while they crossed the provinces of Western Siberia. At each relay the reporters descended from their carriage and found themselves with Michael. Except when meals were to be taken at the post houses, Nadia did not leave the tarantass. When obliged to breakfast or dine, she sat at table, but was always very reserved, and seldom joined in conversation. Alcide, without going beyond the limits of strict propriety, showed that he was greatly struck by the young girl. He admired the silent energy which she showed in bearing all the fatigues of so difficult a journey. The forced stoppages were anything but agreeable to Michael, so he hastened the departure of each relay, roused the innkeepers, urged on the iemschiks, and expedited the harnessing of the tarantass. Then the hurried meal over, always much too hurried to agree with Blount, who was a methodical eater, they started, and were driven as eagles, for they paid like princes. It need scarcely be said that Blount did not trouble himself about the girl at table. That gentleman was not in the habit of doing two things at once. She was also one of the few subjects of conversation which he did not care to discuss with his companion. Alcide having asked him on one occasion how old he thought the girl, "What girl?" he replied, quite seriously. "Why, Nicholas Korpanov's sister." "Is she his sister?" "No, his grandmother," replied Alcide, angry at his indifference. "What age should you consider her?" "Had I been present at her birth, I might have known." Very few of the Siberian peasants were to be seen in the fields. These peasants are remarkable for their pale, grave faces, which a celebrated traveler has compared to those of the Castilians, without the haughtiness of the latter. Here and there some villages already deserted indicated the approach of the Tartar hordes. The inhabitants, having driven off their flocks of sheep, their camels and their horses, were taking refuge in the plains of the north. Some tribes of the wandering Kirghiz, who remained faithful, had transported their tents beyond the Irtych, to escape the depredations of the invaders. Happily, post traveling was as yet uninterrupted, and telegraphic communication could still be effected between places connected with the wire. At each relay horses were to be had on the usual conditions. At each telegraphic station the clerks transmitted messages delivered to them, delaying the state dispatches alone. Thus far, then, Michael's journey had been accomplished satisfactorily. The courier